As you can see, the weather isn't really in our favor right now, but that's not going to dampen our spirits because what we have here is the new Hyundai Stargazer, and it's more than just a new face. Now for some quick driving impressions, and of course we'll be able to tell you more once we're able to borrow it and test it in the real world, but I can tell you with confidence that the steering feel has been improved in this case because there's a little bit more feel and feedback, and there's more heft around the center. So that means, let's say you're on an expressway, you no longer have to guess where the front wheels are pointed, and it gives a better sense of sort of stability. Now, another thing of note here is the ride. Now, we're on pretty smooth pavement right now, so it's pretty hard to judge. Although, judging from the previous Stargazer, at least the pre-facelift Stargazer, it was one of the better riding MPVs in its class, if not the best riding in the subcompact segment. So, Hyundai usually nails the suspension tuning, and it's also reflected here in the Stargazer, in this case, the Stargazer X. Now, we reckon the Stargazer, the standard model, is going to ride that little bit better, but even in this lifted up Stargazer X, it's still a pretty comfortable ride. Now, for the performance aspect, we do have to say that it still uses the same 1.5-liter engine with 113 horsepower and 144 Newton meters of torque. It's then mated to an intelligent variable transmission. All the manual transmission variants have been removed. It's strictly an IVT affair now. It pulls well enough. We still think it's a fair engine. Now, it's not a performance car by any means, but for all intents and purposes, it's not bad here. Of course, we can't wait to actually test it out in the real world when it comes to actual pulling power and, of course, fuel economy. But before we cover what's new at the front, let's first start over at the back because there's a lot going on here. Now, the entire tailgate design is totally different. So as you can see, the license plate has been relocated to the bumper. So this whole panel right here is totally new for this update. Now for the taillights, they're actually different in a way that, they have different clusters on each side, and the LED element itself is also changed. It's a brighter, more red color in this case. And also for the Stargazer X, you get an extended tailgate spoiler. Now we're going to move on to the side, and really there's not much new here. The entire body has been carried over from the soon-to-be outgoing version, but these, we're told, are actually functional now because in the pre-update Stargazer X, those were admittedly just for aesthetics. This one, because of its new design, and it is solid steel, each rail together, they can carry up to 100 kilograms on the roof. So pretty impressive stuff. Of course, you got cladding all around the body to designate it as the Stargazer X. Now we get to the front because this is where the bulk of the changes have happened, because from the fender to the hood, everything here has been changed to a point that, Hyundai must have spent a lot of money changing the entire front end of this car, because making new stampings and panels for body panels isn't cheap. Now, as I mentioned, the hood, it's different now. It's a flatter and sort of more SUV-like position. Now the headlights, it no longer has the thin strip of LED and then you have the headlights. They're actually all in one piece now. And it's sort of reminiscent of the Palisade with this sort of design. And with the Stargazer X, you get a larger grille. Now we're going to show you the non-Stargazer X version in a bit. The front end is a little bit different, but in this case, you get this bigger grille and you have a more rugged lower valence. Now looking at it, it already looks as if they made a totally new generation, but no, this is a major update of the current generation. It's still the same platform underneath. However, that doesn't mean they didn't do anything to the inside. Now inside, the entire dashboard has been redesigned to a point that, again, you feel like in a new generation of car, but I have to remind you, this is a sort of major minor model change. I know it doesn't make sense, but this is what it is. So the instrument panel here, it's now housed in one whole cluster. It no longer has that odd hump in the middle and stuff like that. It's all housed in one panel. It's similar to what Hyundai did previously to the Creta facelift, and for me at least, it is a much neater integration. You have a digital instrument cluster here, and the graphics are now similar to those from the Elantra and the Creta. Now, interestingly, there's actually a hook here that says maximum of 1 kilogram. I don't exactly know what it's for. Perhaps it's for a phone mount. I'm not entirely sure what this thing is for, but it's interesting. An interesting quirk nonetheless. Now for the screen, it is a different design, different software now. And moving down here, you get a new panel to go along with it. Now this panel here, it's sort of inspired by the much larger Santa Fe with this sort of rectangular theme going on here and a couple of haptic touch buttons to go with it. Thankfully, buttons are still here, and typical with Hyundais we've been testing recently, they're pretty easy to use and they're logically laid out. Now, thankfully, with the redesign of the dashboard, they didn't get rid of the rather nifty cubby holes that was in the soon-to-be outgoing model. You still have a nice little shelf up here, nice soft materials too. Top of the dash is still hard plastic, but it doesn't feel so. And then this lower half here, it's an extra storage bin. So what's the difference of the interior of the Stargazer X and the standard model? As far as we can tell, you get these little X's right on the seat. Now, Hyundai claims best-in-class legroom, and it's pretty easy to see why. Now, granted, these seats are in my driving position, but there is the fact that the Hyundai Stargazer has the longest wheelbase in its class, so that's something to take note of. And that also means that, they can extend the passenger area. Now, there's not much to report here that's new, although it still does have these built-in tray tables, just like before. And it now has USB-C ports instead of the old USB-As, so that's also new for the facelifted Stargazer and Stargazer X. Of course, this being an MPV, the all-important rear blower is standard, and if you recall in the big test a couple of years ago, this was actually equipped with a pretty strong air conditioning system. We were pretty impressed by it, and it's raining right now, so we can't really fairly judge it because it's generally cold, but hopefully we'll be able to try it out pretty soon. But yeah, like before, heaps of legroom, space, headroom, legroom, hip room, everything. This is still a genuine 7-seater. Now, we're glad that Hyundai kept the sort of bubble-like shape of the Stargazer, even if the front and rear look angular, because that also means that you get a fair amount of headroom, even all the way here to the third row. Now, again, Hyundai does boast about the fact that they have the longest wheelbase in its class, and it is reflected by the space here in the third row. Now, if you recall back in our big test several years ago that, we rated this as having one of the best accommodations in the third row, and it's still reflected here. Now, other things to see here at the back, you have a cup holder on each side, and of course, cubby spaces. And all in all, not much to report here in the third row, not that we're complaining, because again, this is still a pretty good place to sit. And this being an MPV, it is important to talk about the cargo area. Now, space behind the third row, it's not so bad, but of course, don't expect Santa Fe or Palisade levels of space back there. Now, folding these seats is pretty easy. All you have to do is pull a tab and let gravity do the rest of the work. And from there, once you've folded the seats down, you get a pretty sizable cargo area. Now, if you need like a storage space for sort of valuables and other items that have to be separated from like the main bay, you do have this false floor. And the false floor reveals 3 partitions for separate cargo. So in this case, you could put like smaller items like shoes and other things that you don't want other people to see. No power tailgate though. Now, as promised, we have the standard Stargazer here, and there are notable differences. So the grille, for instance, is smaller because the Stargazer X's grille extends all the way down here, whereas in this, this is the GLS variant, it's split by this bar here in the center, and lower down, you have a less aggressive front valence. Now, the wheels, instead of being trimmed in black, they are finished in gray, and you also lose the roof rails. Another thing you don't get in the standard Stargazer is the body cladding because, in this slightly lower ride height, it would kind of look awkward if I'm honest. Now, over at the back, they're pretty much identical, although again, the Stargazer X has different bumpers. But, the exterior changes are relatively minor side by side, but when you hop inside, you're going to see more of the differences between this and the Stargazer X. Now, the dashboard layout is exactly the same as the Stargazer X. However, The graphics used in the instrument cluster and the touchscreen are totally different. This one still has the slightly older style display, which is probably familiar to previous look Stargazer owners. And the same goes for this touchscreen. Now the touchscreen has more hard buttons. Now you have radio, media, and whatnot. In the touchscreen in the Stargazer X, these buttons are located elsewhere. It's located lower down. And also, you don't get automatic climate control or even digital climate control. Instead, you get good old buttons and dials here for your manual climate control. It also loses out on the wireless charging system, and you get a USB-A port instead of a USB-C port. Now the seats, they are combination leather and fabric instead of full leather, and of course you don't get the X logos on the seats. And lastly, if you notice this one, wow, a good old handbrake. The Stargazer X instead comes with an electronic unit. But as for the rest of the interior, it's largely the same. And that's a tour of the new Stargazer X and a quick look at the Stargazer as well. Now, the Stargazer has a lot resting on its shoulders because it is one of Hyundai Philippines' best sellers. And at the same time, again, we rated this as our top subcompact MPV from a couple of years ago. But, you know, we're going to see if time has been kind to the Stargazer. And with this new update, we're going to be pitting it against its biggest rivals again. And it's going to be interesting to see how it fares today, years after we declared it our big test winner. So watch this space.